But next week should be really exciting because we have episode 14, which according to IMDb is titled War Mantle, which if you don't remember, in I believe episode 3, we got the drop the Stormtrooper program or Death Trooper program. We still don't even know exactly what it is, but it's the replacement for the clones is called Project War Mantle, and that's what Rampart is supposed to be leading. And we talked last week in our speculation video about really the fact that we haven't seen Rampart go back to Camino ever since that third episode, and so hopefully we get some of that. We get to see what's truly happening with the Kaminoans. We haven't seen the Kaminoans since episode 9, so we have to see them, what's happening with Hauser, Crosshair hunting the Bad Batch. The Bad Batch hopefully have left War Mantle next week. Or maybe Crosshair finds them finally on War Mantle and they're forced to leave. I think there's not much new to speculate, but I guess knowing the title of the episode, what do you think is the direction we're headed for next week?
No matter what, we're gonna have a course correction after this, so it'll be a better episode. So I know that for sure is what's coming out. I want to say I feel like this is gonna be the episode where I think this was episode 2, where there's like, okay, we have the Bad Batch had just left Camino, but we have to do some repairs. All right, that's the Bad Batch storyline. If that was that would have been a very episode. But then it continued to shift back to Tarkin and Rampart and the Kaminoans and that whole intrigue. So I think we're going to go into that sort of format, hopefully moving on for the next 3 episodes, where all these different storylines are happening before they finally converge. I think the emphasis will definitely be on the Kaminoans and how their relationship with the Empire. Rampart will be the lead of that storyline. I think Crosshair will be fully in the Bad Batch storyline. I don't think he's just going to capture them and that's it. I think he's going to go a little bit more of a darker route. I think maybe just trying to beat the Bad Batch tactically when you have a bunch of regular clones and human conscripts, as great as they are. It's probably better to assume that the Bad Batch will outthink you and outwork you at this point, especially after receiving all those injuries. So I'm thinking if Crosshair really is committing to tracking down the Bad Batch, I don't think he's going to bring in so much of a force, more so that he's going to try to play more mind games, try to make it seem like, things are fine. And maybe things are changing with his chip or something too. I mean, we've seen Hauser, so I mean, I'd like to see Hauser in the next episode with that Kaminoan Rampart situation going on and unfolding there. I'd like to think that maybe Crosshair uses that example of Hauser and tries to be like, oh my god, like I have to snap out of this and that. In truth, he's not. In truth, he's just trying to, beat up the Bad Batch, capture Omega, do whatever he can. And I think it'd be really twisted, but very on point to be able to say that the Bad Batch are like, okay, we can reverse this. What do we need to do to stop your chip? And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Crosshair says, the chip only sort of worked for me even when it's pushed to the max. I'm doing this because I really want to do this. I'm a loyalist to the Empire. I'd like to see the one member of the Bad Batch that was always a little darker, always a little bit against the rules, more so than the Bad Batch. Not only has the flip switched in on him with Order 66, but I'd like him to actually now be fully convinced that, I'm doing this regardless of the chip or not. Right? You've done enough to convince me that we were never a real family. We were never a real unit. So I'd like to see some psychological warfare from Crosshair's end on the Bad Batch. I'd like to see him definitely go after Omega because Omega is his replacement in that group. So he's like, yeah, you might be the new shiny thing right now, but after a while, if they don't care about you. There's always gonna be like a hierarchy, and maybe that's what the show's trying to do. So far, we built up the Bad Batch as like there's Omega, there's a little bit of underneath her Hunter, there's Wrecker a lot below, and then there's Tech and Echo as interchangeable at the bottom. And maybe really going after Omega and saying like right now you're like the most valuable piece of the Bad Batch. They don't care about Echo, they don't care about Tech. Everyone's at no one's truly equal. Maybe there's some hierarchy things that have to be discussed and changed for them to truly be a unit instead of just wandering through space as mercenaries. Regardless of what happens, I do want the Bad Batch to really self-reflect in a way that they still haven't since maybe Cut LaQuaine that episode. Um, I'd like to see Fennec come back in the story. I don't think it'll happen necessarily, but I feel like she's not done with her story and her involvement with the Kaminoans. I'm not really sure about Cad Bane, but I would think that he'd be back too. A little bit more, uh, intrigued with Lama Su and Nalase. I think that would be pretty good to see that, reinforced, be like, okay, let's bring it back to what started off and kicked off the show once more. Either way, I'm expecting a lot of different things and converging storylines. I honestly, there could be 3 different storylines that happen at one point, right? You got the Kaminoan perspective, you got Rampart and Hauser or whatever, and you got Crosshair and the Bad Batch, and all 3 of them, kind of tie into each other like a braid or something. And they really have to do some really strong legwork because I don't think having just an episode that could be seen as like, okay, that's the story there is going to work for War Mantle. I'm assuming that this is going to be like a 3-episode arc to finish off the season. I don't think it makes any sense just to do one story about here and then the next episode do another story and then the next episode do another story. I want these storylines to actually escalate, and it doesn't have to end on like a definite note. Maybe things just explode and become chaotic, right? Maybe somehow Hera's back in, maybe somehow Rex is back in, maybe you see the whole rebellion beginning start to twinge off or something. I don't know. But I think there's plenty of reasons that an arc with all these interconnected storylines has to end off the season.
I'd love any of that to happen, what you said. I think my prediction would be that 14, since it's called War Mantle, episode 11 was our first true episode where we didn't have the Bad Batch for more than like 5 seconds. I think my prediction would be that we get another one of those, and this next episode is all about Hauser, Rampart, and the Kaminoans, and we get to see kind of that whole side played out. And then at the end, it's like we've got the Kaminoans who are saying we need Omega. We got to get Omega because this War Mantle plan is definitely going to supersede us, and we're not going to be needed anymore. So we need Omega. So I think that's going to kickstart Fennec and Cad Bane back into episode 15, where we'll pick back up with Crosshair and the Bad Batch, and then we'll have Crosshair, Cad Bane, and Fennec all trying to get the Bad Batch, and the Bad Batch being chased by all 3 of them, and have this big epic showdown, which I then think Omega will probably get captured, and they'll have to get her back in 16. Or they might not get her back this season. We'll see. But I think I wouldn't put it past them, I would say, to have next week be basically Bad Batchless. Maybe we have a tag at the end with the Bad Batch and Crosshair chasing them or something. I'm not sure how that'll work, but I think, and I wouldn't mind that. I would love to see like a full Project War Mantle, because that's been the most interesting stuff. And as you said, the Bad Batch aren't bad characters. In fact, I really like a lot of the Bad Batch. I think Omega, Wrecker, and Hunter have been really developed into solid characters. Tech is funny comic relief. Echo, I love him from Clone Wars, but they've done nothing for him basically in the Bad Batch. But they're all strong characters. but the Bad Batch is the least interesting part of the show for the most part. For canon junkies like us, when we're trying to consume all this stuff and see how it all interconnects, I think the thing that keeps us coming back is seeing stormtroopers. What's going to happen to the end of the clones? What is War Mantle, and what are the Kaminoans doing? Because this all really affects the next 20 years of the galaxy, 25 years of the galaxy, and the next time we see somebody with some type of Kaminoan cloning technology is Dr. Pershing in The Mandalorian. So how do we get from Kaminoans being in charge of Kaminoan cloning to Dr. Pershing being in charge of Kaminoan cloning? That's something that's really interesting to me, and I think that story will start in the Bad Batch and probably get expanded upon in later canon material. But yeah, I would love an episode. I would love it if this episode was all politics of War Mantle. Tarkin comes back. It's Rampart and Tarkin versus Lama Su and Nala Se. And Nala Se's got her thing off on the side that she's cooking up, and maybe she's contacting Fennec and like, you got to get Omega for me because I have this plan. And Lama Su's contacting Cad Bane. He's like, you got to get Fennec, or you got to get Omega for me. And then you got Rampart and Tarkin having their whole plan. I would really like to see all that, and then maybe a little bit of Hauser thrown in. Maybe not directly. Maybe he doesn't have a directly large appearance in this episode, but he's going to at least be a big plot point of why War Mantle's accelerated, because they're like, look at the clones are already falling apart. They're not listening to everything we're saying. We need to move on to conscripted troopers as fast as possible. So I'd love it if that was the next episode, and then we get more Bad Batch related and Omega related stuff to close it out. And I think that would be a nice final arc, because it would all start to tie together. And I'm still on the train that from last week. I don't think Crosshair is going to die in this season. I think they've set him up too much to be like the villain of this show, and I think from what they've done with just the fact that he hasn't gotten much screen time as a character recently, I think that it would be better used if they saved him to next season and they got we got a legitimate season about him being kind of abandoned by the Empire, abandoned by his family. We got this whole thing, and then it built up to more emotional death for him, because I feel like at this point we only got 3 episodes to tie all these things up. How are they going to do it justice to kill him off where it really affects the Bad Batch moving forward? Because right now they don't seem like they're on the same page at all. So I don't know if the Bad Batch would be that upset if he died at this point. So I'd like to see them kind of start to redeem him to where if he dies, then the Bad Batch, it really emotionally affects them. And I think Omega's the strong emotional pull for this season. But those are my predictions for next week and beyond. And now we only have 3 episodes left, so we're really in the end game now, and they better start hitting hard. And I trust them, as you said. This show has been really, really good when it's like that first episode was excellent, and a lot of our, like the Hera episodes were really, really strong. The Cad Bane episodes were really strong. The Rex episode was really good. The 3rd episode with Crosshair as the lead was really good. So that they have been consistently really, really solid to great this entire season. So this is the one episode that kind of throws off the pacing shouldn't make us more pessimistic for how this show's going to end. But I think we're in for a really cool finale, and something that will get us really excited for season 2. And hopefully it's a strong tease for what season 2's main theme will be about.
Right, and I mean, it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to think that there's going to be some sort of development in the last few episodes that could have an effect in the Book of Boba Fett, being that's the next big Star Wars show. I know Visions is coming up, but that is very much non-canon, just more Sandlot experiment than it is, like actually influential on Star Wars at this point in time. But the Book of Boba Fett is big, and obviously with things like we said, like is Crosshair going to be abandoned? Is Omega ever going to meet Alpha or Boba Fett? Is Boba Fett going to show up in this season? There are things that these next 3 episodes got a lot of heavy lifting to do, and I'm hoping I don't expect it, but I'm hoping that, our episode lengths are more like 31, 32 minutes for the next few episodes, because I think just a few extra minutes alone could really develop each storyline and then allow us to bring in these surprises that the show is still very much capable of doing. Again, this is like, when you have a player in their rookie season, right? They're gonna have some amazing games, but they're going through growing pains too. They're gonna go through some very silly, like, okay, you could have done better. Like, why would you do that in this game, right? Like, come on. You were doing so well. Oh, your momentum is there, and then it suddenly cut off, right? It's a show that is learning to become itself. I think that's what the Bad Batch is. If it gets a much stronger development of these characters and their hierarchy and their needs of the Bad Batch itself over these next 3 episodes, I will consider this a very strong season. I don't think there's anything about the show that is bad. I just think there are things that are like, don't necessarily need that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's like those later seasons of Rebels. I'm gonna say it again. AP5. We get Ahsoka in the temple with Kanan and Ezra, and then we're building up to the finale, and then we've got an episode about AP5. So this was kind of our first true AP5 episode in the Bad Batch, which, take it or leave it, it's not bad, especially if you're going, when we go back and eventually rewatch this show, we won't think twice about this episode because it'll just be there, and we won't have to have waited a full week for it and to talk about it. Thanks so much for watching this segment of the Star Wars Lads podcast. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video by clicking the thumbs up button down below and subscribe to our channel for new Star Wars content every single week. If you want to watch our full discussion, click the video on the left. Or if you want to check out one of our other awesome videos, click the video on the right.